Welcome to this explainer. Listen, if you follow geological news even a little bit, you know the chatter around Yellowstone National Park has been absolutely deafening lately. I mean, we've seen a flurry of bizarre geological behavior stretching from 2024 straight into 2026. And as you'd expect, it has sparked some pretty wild theories out there. So let's cut through the noise together, all right? We're going to look directly at the hard data from the scientists on the ground to decode exactly what this historic park is doing, why it's doing it, and what it actually means for the millions of people who visit us every year. Okay, let's dive into this. Because honestly, this single sentence perfectly captures just how suddenly things changed. Picture it. It's July 23rd, 2024. Dozens of tourists had just stepped off the loop trail at Biscuit Basin. Black Diamond Pool was simmering away, doing its normal thing. And then, completely without warning, the ground literally just opened up.
Section 1. The Biscuit Basin explosion.
This explosion really set the tone for the hyperactive state we're seeing in the park today. The sheer scale of it was just staggering. We're talking about a massive column of water, rock, and mud shooting anywhere from 400 to 600 feet straight up into the sky. Boulders weighing hundreds of pounds were thrown hundreds of feet, completely destroying boardwalks, benches, and fences. Miraculously, and I mean miraculously, everyone ran and there were zero casualties. It's now being called the best documented hydrothermal explosion in Yellowstone's recorded history. But here is the detail that absolutely matters most. Yellowstone Superintendent Cam Sholey has kept Biscuit Basin closed. It was closed for the entire 2025 season and remains closed right into the spring of 2026, basically waiting for scientists to give the green light. And, well, they haven't given it yet.
Section 2. 3 Yellowstone anomalies.
To really understand why the park remains on such high alert, we have to look at what I call the rule of 3. 3 totally distinct anomalies happening all at the exact same time. Let's start with anomaly number 1, 19. 19 miles across. That is the size of the Norris Uplift anomaly. It's a patch of ground that is roughly the footprint of the entire city of Chicago, sitting right there just south of Norris Geyser Basin near Gibbon Falls. And it is bulged upward by about 1 inch. Tracked by 17 GPS stations and fully confirmed by satellite radar, this massive swelling was accompanied by more than 100 small earthquakes in 2025 alone, topping out at a magnitude of 2.7. Then, right around mid-January 2026, the bulge just paused. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the story it tells about anomaly number 2, Steamboat Geyser. Steamboat is the tallest active geyser on Earth. And just look at these numbers. In 2019, it erupted 48 times, but by 2025, that number had plummeted to just 3. Actually, after April 2025, there were 230 straight days of complete silence. Experts pretty much assumed its predictable sequence was completely over. But then, on New Year's Eve 2025, at exactly 10:02 p.m., Steamboat suddenly blasted a 400-foot column of water into the black winter sky, just totally catching all the observers off guard. And right on the heels of that whole shebang, we get anomaly number 3, the sudden reawakening of Norris Geyser. Now, this is the world's largest acidic geyser, throwing water with a pH of 3.3. To put that in perspective, that is sour enough to eat right through steel. Ekinis had been completely fast asleep for 6 years. Then boom, on February 7th, 2026, it woke up. It erupted again on the 9th, the 12th, and the 15th. Now it's going off every 2 to 5 hours, sending this scalding acidic water 20 to 30 feet into the air. So we have 3 major anomalies, all in the very same park, all within an 8-month window.
Section 3. The real Yellowstone hazards.
So with all of this simultaneous activity, the bulge, the surprise eruptions, the massive explosions, it is incredibly easy to see why the internet is completely buzzing with apocalyptic clickbait. But we really have to separate the Hollywood myth from the actual real hazards here. The disaster movies absolutely want you to believe that a caldera super eruption, like a full-blown magma-driven apocalypse, is just around the corner. But the scientists at the United States Geological Survey, the USGS, will be the very first to tell you that this is definitely not what keeps them up at night. The real immediate hazards inside Yellowstone, those are hydrothermal explosions and major earthquakes. Let's define exactly what that first major hazard actually is. A hydrothermal explosion is essentially a giant steam bomb hiding in the ground. It happens when superheated water suddenly flashes to steam inside a confined pocket, which then violently detonates the earth right above it. Imagine just walking on a peaceful boardwalk with a literal steam bomb taking beneath your feet. This is exactly what we saw happen at Biscuit Basin. Yellowstone averages a massive one of these about every 700 years. For some context on that, there are at least 25 explosion craters wider than 100 meters inside the park right now. Take Indian Pond, for example. That is a massive 2,900-year-old blast crater. So that is hazard number 1, which builds right into hazard number 2, earthquakes. The USGS explicitly states that the risk from large earthquakes is actually much, much larger than a volcanic eruption, simply because they happen so much more frequently. Just take a look at this terrifyingly rapid timeline from the 1959 Hebgen Lake disaster. At 11:37 p.m., a massive, magnitude 7.3 earthquake struck just west of the park. Within seconds, literally seconds, 50 million cubic yards of rock tore off a canyon wall, completely burying a campground. Within minutes, a brand new lake started filling up the valley. And within 24 hours, the shockwaves caused 289 separate hot springs to suddenly erupt as geysers. Tragically, 28 people lost their lives that night. Section 4. The threat to millions. The incredible, raw power of these sudden, very real events, like the earthquakes and those steam bomb explosions, really forces us to shift our focus over to the human stakes. If an event like that 1959 quake were to strike the geographic hazard zone today, who is exactly in the way? Well, that number right there is who is in the way. In 2025, Yellowstone National Park logged 4,762,988 visitors. It was the second highest total ever recorded, jumping up over 5% from the previous year. We are talking about an absolute sea of humanity standing directly on top of this highly active geologic system. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the logistical challenge we face. Think about the populations of the tiny towns located directly in the hazard zone. Gardner, Montana has just 818 people. Even if you combine all the major gateway towns, Gardner, West Yellowstone, Jackson Hole, and Cody, you only hit a total year-round population of about 23,500. Yet, on a peak summer afternoon, the tourist population inside the park outnumbers every single gateway town combined by a factor of more than 10. And all of them are sitting right downstream from the Norris Bulge and those hyperactive geyser basins. Section 5, a living laboratory. Given those massive, massive stakes, it is absolutely critical that we listen to the expert consensus here. And guess what? The experts do not view Yellowstone as some ticking time bomb of doom. Instead, they view it as an incredible living laboratory. Michael Polland, the USGS geophysicist in charge of the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, really said it best when he was discussing the massive Norris Uplift anomaly. He flat out said, that does not mean that the volcano is about to erupt. It is Yellowstone being Yellowstone. Experts like Jamie Farrell over at the University of Utah point out that watching these anomalies actually helps us better understand harder to study volcanoes elsewhere in the world, like over in Italy or Greece. The scientists actually view this new data as a huge positive, giving them completely unprecedented insight. So, the crucial point is understanding why the scientists are so incredibly calm despite the bulging ground and the wild geyser anomalies. Honestly, it all comes down to the missing precursors. A real magmatic supereruption would broadcast huge, unavoidable warning signs that are just completely absent right now. The current ground deformation is incredibly deep. We're talking 9 miles down, not shallow. The swelling is slow, just 1 inch in 6 months, not rapid at all. The earthquakes are tiny, maxing out at a 2.7, which is just a tiny fraction of what a real precursor earthquake swarm would look like. And there are 0 changes in the chemistry of the gas vents. The classic signs of impending doom, they just aren't there. Which really brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? Because the magma, 9 miles down, is definitely still breathing. The ground is still an inch higher. Steamboat and Equinus are throwing massive columns of water into the sky, and Biscuit Basin remains a splintered, closed-off crater. And almost 5 million people will arrive next summer to stand on top of it all. So are we watching this system slowly load for an event no one alive has ever witnessed? Or is this massive living laboratory of a volcano finally giving us the exact data we need to understand what real precursors look like long before any real danger arrives? The honest, plain answer from the scientists is that nobody knows yet. But we're watching, we're measuring, and we are absolutely learning. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, guys. I really hope this helps clear up some of the mysteries of Yellowstone's recent data. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next.